Good evening. My name is Caden Parker, and today I will be covering the Ukraine War and the global grain prices. Three modules from the book I will be covering today are trade theories, economic development, trade policy, tariffs, subsidies, and quotas. Before the war, Ukraine was a major agricultural power, which supplied nearly 10% of the world's global wheat production. With its very fertile land and perfect location, it made it a perfect place for the food supply chain to grow bundles of food for the people in the world. But the war from Russia and Ukraine had a heavy impact on these exports, especially with the Black Sea ports like Odessa being blockaded and damaged by the Russian military. The global food market is definitely feeling shock due to the upcoming points of rising prices and the struggle to get food where it needs to go due to the lack of other growers. Competitive advantage in crisis. According to trade theory, specifically the Ricardian theory, countries should specialize in producing goods they have a competitive advantage in. For example, Ukraine make growing wheat. They have an advantage at growing wheat. They stick to it. Ukraine fits that with grain. But this theory assumes that it is always peaceful, open trade, and it's never in wartime blockade or any kind of infrastructure damage and risk. All reduces efficiency and prevents trade. Just like this war has caused major turmoil and has reduced the trade of the global wheat that Ukraine produces to the market. This shows the limitations of this theory in the real world face crises that occur. Sanctions, exports, bans, and the grain deal. So trade policies played a massive role in this area. Russia imposed export bans, which caused Ukraine to limit all the grains that they were sending out, like their wheat, their corn, and other grain type plants. Due to this caused a major shortage in the world markets. An international sanction made everything way more complex. However, there was hope. A temporary grain deal helped restart limited shipments. But when Russia pulled out in 2023 from Ukraine, the prices surged again to where they were before, causing another shortage. Governments then came in and used tools like tariffs, quotas, and deals to manage crisis trade, but this came with very mixed success rates, ranging from good all the way to bad. And this is due to the speed it was done and the sloppiness of some, but not all. There were some good ones still. So now you're asking yourself, who suffered the most out of this ordeal? Well, the countries that were affected the most were the developing countries that were dependent on the cheap food imports from the Ukraine. These countries, such as Lebanon, Egypt, Somalia, and Yemen, when the prices spiked, it would cause a food insecurity, which caused unrest and humanitarian emergencies globally. which then would spread across into more countries because of the ones that depend on these countries, causing a massive spike all across. But this is where developmental economics intersected with trade. Countries with low resilience face major setbacks from this global shock. So the global response. Who came in to help resolve this or soften the blow? Institutions like the UN and EU stepped in to help. These two organizations came in with emergency food and aid via the WFP, along with the EU implementing subsidies on local farmers to help them have a steady cash flow to be able to continue to grow the crop to give food to the later on after harvest. When it came to G7, they came up with new grain corridors via land and sea. This was ways that they could go and trade and go different routes to avoid going where they used to go, to avoid the conflicts from different countries which they are now facing. Some of these routes were through Eastern Europe, but overall, unfortunately, these were some reactive policies and they were not very long term because they cannot give subsidies to farmers every year to keep them going or continue to give food non-stop. They have to come up with a way to solve it completely. So drawing off that, I go into my next slide of what can be done. For example, the first thing that could happen is it reveals how fragile the global food system truly is. Countries need to diversify their trade partners and develop domestic food systems by not just trading with the same people over and over, but looking at the whole board and drawing in from everybody to make sure that if one goes down, they always have a backup, and vice versa. International institutions need a better emergency plans and coordination mechanisms to avoid the total dependency on a few suppliers like Ukraine and Russia. This draws back onto what I was just saying, on how if you put all your eggs into one basket, then and you drop that basket, they all break. But if you drop one basket with one egg, you lose the one egg, but you have all the other baskets with all the other eggs. So you're still saving yourself from the risk of this occurring again. Another thing is to strengthen the food system in the global south. The south is a great place to grow crops because it is a warm environment where you can grow crops year round. Unfortunately, they just lack the funding of some of the northern countries like Europe and North America. And finally, improve the global coordination during crises. This is where you take the global leaders and make sure that they can cooperate together in times of need for the people. To wrap up, the Ukraine war showed how interconnected trade, policy, and development truly are. Trade theory helps us understand the basic structure, but policy and development, economics, explain who wins, who loses, and what we can do about it. Real lives are affected when economic systems break down, which is why we all need to just band together and solve the problems as one. Thank you.